Hi my friend, in this video we're going to be making throwback tech house drums inspired by Mr. Belt and Wezol's song, It's Not Right, But It's Okay. And we're going to find out if we can do this in under 45 minutes by using the 80-20 rule of tech house drum production. What you're listening to is the song that we'll be working on, and now what you're looking at is the Ableton project file that we'll be working on. In particular, we'll be focusing on this drum group right here, and we'll be going over things in the order that I actually created them, so that you can follow along when you're creating your own drums. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because we'll be doing a full recap of the 80-20 rule so that you can finish songs fairly fast like this. Because all in all, this took about 30 to 45 minutes for me to recreate the drums here. And this entire song, if we zoom out, mixed, mastered, arranged, and completely ready to go, it only took about 6 hours for me to create. So if finishing songs faster, just like this, is something you would like help with, I've made you a free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that I use to completely finish one song like this every single week. Visit the link that is on screen now or in the description to grab the ultimate song finishing toolkit for free. And if you want to take things to the next level, you can also find a link to this video's project files in the description as well. But with that said, let's jump into this. Alright. So the first thing is, main key is to make sure that you have the actual reference track in here. So we have the tune, It's Not Right, But It's Okay, up in here, and it's turned off, and I've mapped the S key. So I can flick back and forth. And the main thing is you want to first make sure you've got the right notes. So if you have a look at the notes here, listen back and forth. It's just classic 4 on the floor kind of pattern. Next thing is to choose the right sound. So if we have a look at the sound, right now what I'm using is a sample from our friends over at Rocket Powered Sound. It's the Eyes EDM kick, and what's more important is the way that I got this. So what I've been doing lately that I think is pretty cool is if we go over to the reference track, I think near the end here, what I did was I found a section of the song. If we listen right here, right there, and what I did is I clipped basically the kick, and then I dragged that into this rack here called the R kick. So you can see here, it's been thrown in, and we can have the kick isolated here. And basically I just made this rack that has a bunch of settings that help isolate the kick even further from the rest of the reference track. So by increasing the filter envelope and bringing down the filter frequency, we're able to kind of isolate the kick without just, what would it be called, low passing all of it, which can sound unnatural. Just a little other few things, increase the velocity, and I think that might have been it. Reduce a bit of the, brought down the high shelf a little bit over here. We can see that. Then what I did is I flattened and froze that so that I ended up with like a kick here. So you can see here, flattened and frozen kick. We solo it and listen to it. That's the kick. That way it's more or less just the kick. You might kind of hear a little bit of hi-hat in there. So once the kick is nicely isolated, you could use this in your tracks for sure. But what I've been really loving lately is what you can do with Ableton 12 is if you right click it on it and you say show in browser, it'll show that sample there. And then you can press this right here and it'll find similar sounds within your library. And you can kind of go through this and basically create like a little drum rack, as you can see that I did here, filled with all these different sounds that kind of sounded similar. And then what you can do then is you can use a selector like I have here. So if we play this, you can adjust the selector to quickly audition stuff that you have in your rack there. But you can also just go like this. If you go into the MIDI, you can go like this and just play it like that. And then as you're doing that, make sure you're flicking back and forth between what you have here and the reference track. And when I was originally doing this, I was doing this at the back half of the song when there's just kind of drums for like the DJ outro. That's a cool way how I got the kick there. In terms of any other processing, that's really it. A little bit of the standard channel strip stuff that I did, so I just shoved out a bit of the highs here. And I've been really liking using drum bus for the last little bit. So if we listen to the kick with drum bus and the without, it just kind of, it's definitely adding some volume, which is part of it, but it can add a little bit of fullness to the track. Main thing that I'm doing is I'm not playing with too much of the saturation or anything. Bringing down the damp a bit to get rid of a bit of the top end. Main thing I'm dialing in is this boom here, and then bringing in down the decay so it's not too much. Kind of just trying to dial it in. And It adds a little bit of body and fullness to the kick. I've been really enjoying that in the last little bit, so something there. But yeah, main thing is first, let's get this loop back here actually. Yeah, so first thing, get the notes, then choose the right sounds, and then the main key thing is, yeah, you can do drum bus and all kind of processing like that, but really the key is just getting the volume correctly. So adjusting your levels until it's similar to what you have in the reference track. Kind of like this is how I usually do it, flicking back and forth almost musically. So that's a look at the kick. Then let's move over on to the clap. So let's take a look and a listen to that. So what I've done is I've layered two different claps. This again from our friends over at Rocker Powered Sound. The Plains clap and the Chrome clap. All of these are from the Ultimate Sample Pack, which is like a whole ton of samples, which makes it super useful to comb through all that, especially when doing the similar sounds thing, because I believe there is a chance that if we go over here to the reference track, no. So I didn't do the similar sound function for the clap, just kind of listened through a bunch of samples to find something that works and made sense. Again, looking at the pattern first, it's just like the kind of standard snare or clap pattern where it's on like the 2 and the 4 of the beats. I don't know why I kind of cut it up funny. I would ignore that. Normally it would probably just look something like a normal 4-bar loop like this. Probably just as I was arranging things and moving stuff around. But yeah, so once you have the note selection, then the main thing is the sound selection. So I was just kind of going through claps in like my library here, and then just kind of doing this. Kind of rhythmically in time like that to try to find the right sounds. Then again, once you find the right sounds, main thing is trying to get your levels to be at similar volumes. Once your levels are at similar volumes, just kind of standard mix as you go channel strip stuff. So removing a bunch of the lows to make room for the bass and the kick. We're not using any transient shaping, but I will go over that when we get to it. We're using the Ableton saturation. I've just mapped the knob to one of these racks here so that you can quickly use your eyes instead of like digging into the settings. And then also the all this channel strip loads on every one of my audio and MIDI tracks, so I'm not all the time grabbing an EQ8, all the time grabbing a sidechain and all that kind of stuff. It's always there, ready to go. And then other than that, I guess one weird thing that you can see that I did here is I was kind of hearing the claps kind of like having this reverb that was like almost like tuned, like one hit was lower than one hit was higher. And the way I went about replicating this is just, I just kind of automated. I added a hybrid reverb onto this. I don't know if I play with the settings too much. I might have adjusted the decay to make it so that it felt like a bit like it's decaying in time with the song. But the main thing is you can see I've adjusted the EQ on the reverb, so one hit is low and then one hit's high. Just a, I don't know, kind of cool little trick, add some movement and vibe and change over time to the track. Kind of humanization thing almost in a way too. Then what I added next was this snare. Let's have a look and listen to that. So same patterns on the 2 and the 4, just like the clap. I'm not 100% sure if there's a snare in the original track. If we flick back to the reference, it might be there. It sounds like it's definitely very clap heavy. I usually like to do something like this. I guess actually I should mention this real quick. Back over in the claps, I have 2 different claps added in there. And if we look into the drum rack, we go over to controls. One has been panned to the left and the other one has been panned to the left also. Oh no, sorry. One has been panned to the left and one has been panned to the right. Yeah, so I'm using the Plains and Chrome claps. And I think one is tuned up. The transposition has been moved up. The idea that I usually go for is like claps, kind of left and right, doing stereo stuff, and then a snare in the middle, adding a little bit more body and weight to that drum hit right there. So for this one, mostly layering in for taste. Kind of like that. And then standard channel strip stuff. So what we are doing here is EQ8 is removing a bit of the lows, leaving room for the kick and the bass. Some saturation here, which is adding some fullness and some body to the sound. And then I do have this raw or preset diode treatment that comes in kind of more in a build-up in the track as more of an arrangement trick. So I'll go over that if I go into an arrangement video later. So then let's have a look and I'll listen to this next bit, which is a bit of a top loop here, just a bit. just a bit of a break at the beginning. I kind of hear, like, if you listen to the original track, that thing. I was trying to emulate that with a drum break. A little different. I kind of like the original one better. This one's a little bit more like, I don't know, it sounds more muffled and lower in the mix. But basically, I just found like a cool drum break on Splice, grabbed the beginning chunk of it that had that, or I don't know if it was the beginning or not. Yeah, it was the beginning that had that cool little kind of hi-hat bit, and just added that to the beginning of every 16 bars, I want to say. And then in terms of any processing, just removing a bunch of the lows with the standard channel strip here, some one knob sidechain to add a bit of that pumping vibe that also makes room for the kick, and a little bit of Ableton saturation to fill out the sound a little bit, and that's about it. The main thing there is to set up the volume so that it's proper against the reference track. So then the next thing I added was this drum break, which sounded like this. Solo for a second. So in the original tune, there might be a bit of a drum break in there. I always like adding in some kind of drum break or some top loop to go against the core sounds that we've built out. So the core sounds being like the kick, the clap, the snares, and the hi-hats that we'll get into in a bit. It adds a lot more like character and groove to the tune, and a lot of like human, cool, interesting feel you just can't get with you can't always get with like programming in MIDI and those kinds of things. So I really like working with samples like that for that reason. In terms of any processing, one thing I like to do is if you set the warp to beats and then you change it to the arrow pointing to the right, you can drag down this amount here, which is going to kind of tighten up the transients, which I like the sound of the tightness, and I also like how it can help blend in with those core sounds that you've programmed in with MIDI and one-shots. It can blend in a little bit more better, I would say. Then in terms of any processing, standard channel strip stuff here with maybe some tricks, we'll see. Notice standard channel strip. So we're removing a bunch of the lows, shelving out a little bit of the highs, which could be a nice natural way to reduce some of the highs. The low pass can sometimes sound a little unnatural. Sometimes it could sound amazing, but in this instance, I went for the high shelf. Then now we're using the transient shaper here. So this is playing with the transients of each one of the hits, and I'm using the 3 kilohertz transient shaper plugin. The only thing is I have mapped the key, values or knobs to an Ableton rack. That way I don't have to always open up the transient shaper and open up the window and all that kind of stuff. It's just always there, ready to go to make quick adjustments. So the main thing I'm doing is bringing down the sustain, which is tightening up the sound a little bit further as well. Then we're running into a one knob sidechain, which is just using Ableton shaper device, mapped to quarter notes, which is usually what kick's doing anyways, and it's just bringing down the volume. So this way you don't need to jump into a compressor and all that kind of stuff. It's just right there for you. You can dial it into taste, use your ears, and then move on. And then a little bit of Ableton saturation to fill out the sound a little bit. And then we are running into this width little module that I've made, which again is another free plugin called Polyverse Wider. And again, just mapped the key knobs to this little Ableton rack so that it's just there for quick access. So what we're doing is bringing up the width, which is pushing the sound to the left and right, making some space in the middle, and just kind of giving like a cool, nice stereo vibe. Then next up, let's have a look and listen to the open hi-hat. Let's jump into the MIDI too for you. So basically what's going on here is it's the standard hi-hat pattern as I've highlighted here, which is like on all the off beats. And I've made it so like every other beat is like one's a bit louder, one's a little lower, one's a bit louder, one's a little lower, with the velocities to add a little bit of humanization feel, make it not sound like a robot. And then that's the main thing. Then what I just did was I added in like a little bit of flourishes here. Oh, we're using some RPS hats as well for this little bit of a fill. So main thing was to get like the standard open hi-hat bit in pattern, and then add in some little kind of like flourish there, which just sounds cool, I would say. I think it's in the original. Something similar to that is going on there. So that's kind of what I was recreating. So once the pattern is done, the main thing is sound selection. In this instance, I have this drum rack that I set up with some of my favorite sounds, and I just kind of flicked between them until I found something that I liked by flicking back and forth between this and what we got here. And then I did tighten up the end point of the loop to make it a little bit more one of those like, or else it's like all fucking big and wide. This tightens it up quite a bit, and then I adjusted the fade out to make it kind of a little bit tighter and a little bit more of a natural cutoff instead of just hitting a wall there. Did I do anything else cool? I transposed it up one semitone, and I did play with this like pitch bend thing, which I think is making it so that the first hit is a bit of a higher pitch, and then it goes down to the lower pitch, so it's gonna add kind of like a nice like snappiness, and again kind of making it sound a little tighter too, I would say. Then standard channel strip, so removing a bunch of the lows, increasing the attack a bit to kind of try to emphasize that hit of the open hi-hat, the initial hit, and then bringing down the sustain to again try to tighten up that sound of it. If you listen to the original, it's pretty tight. I feel like there's maybe a shaker layered on top too that I didn't get, but pretty cool. So pretty tight, and then just a little bit of this width plugin. I was just playing with it. It's there, and I don't usually make the open hi-hat width wider, but I liked it. If we turn it off, I feel like it's just adding almost some presence to it or something. Yeah, I just dig it, so I did it. Yeah, main thing there is the volumes though again. I think ours could go up a little bit, but I think we're good with that. Next thing that I added was the close hi-hats, so let's take a look and listen to that. I'm gonna go ahead and solo it too. And I'm gonna solo it with the open hi-hat, so you can hear they're working together. Cool. Pretty big fan of how that turned out, actually. So first thing with the pattern, so if you can see kind of the more deep, darker yellow hits here, basically I usually start by having the same hits on the offbeat, so it's similar to the open hi-hat, and emphasizing the open hi-hat, and also as an arrangement bit, when you pull the open hi-hat, you still have something kind of keeping that driving hi-hat element going. Okay, so this might look a little bit confusing. I usually explain this in the same way, but it's like, I did the first half of this, like this, and the main thing was kind of like, if I'm not mistaken, this probably started off more like just this, like that, and then I kind of got like the pattern right like that, because it's very much like almost 16th notes. You can hear quite a lot of hi-hats. And then basically just played a lot with the velocities. So you can see down here, it's kind of like cascading almost, just adding some kind of humanization feel to it. If it was all straight, it sounds so robotic and crappy. So that's one way to humanize it, and another way I like to humanize it and keep some interest going is by changing the sample that's being triggered. That's kind of the idea. So once like one beat was done, then basically you can just copy it over to the second bar there, and then just make slight adjustments. So you can see like this one's up at the top here. Some of these have been removed on the second half, so that way you're kind of creating some kind of call and response. And it's an easy way to tackle something more complicated, just breaking it down to one chunk, duplicating it, and then making a slight adjustment. In terms of processing, I want to see if I just did anything on the simpler device. Doesn't look like it. Looks like any processing was just standard mix as you go channel strip stuff. Oh yeah, if I didn't already mention, I probably mentioned the intro, but all this stuff, this channel strip and this whole project file and stuff is available in the link in the description if you'd like to get it. Definitely just makes things a little faster in my opinion. But yeah, so removing some of the lows, as you can see here, it's not really doing much. Then we're using the transient shaper to tighten up the sound a bit, the Ableton saturation to fill up the sound a little bit, and a bit of this wider plugin to kind of push the hi-hats into the stereo field a little. The main thing is trying to nail the volumes. Cool, and then we got one last one here, which is this break shaker. So let's have a look and a listen to this. I'm gonna bring up the volume here. Really cool shaker. I might use it in other tracks, to be honest. I just found it on Splice, I think. But I don't know. It sounds like light and nice, and I don't know. I think there's not really a shaker in the original tune. Maybe like a little bit. I don't think it's doing this much of like a constant shaking pattern, but I threw this in here to kind of get that going. Threw it in there. I don't know if I'm doing anything crazy, main thing is just channel strip, removing some of the lows, but it's clearly not doing anything because it's already been high passed quite a bit. Doing some sidechain to add some pumping and some groove and to make some room for the kick, and then a bit of saturation to fill up the sound a bit, and then that width plugin to push things into the stereo field a little bit. And yeah, that's a pretty good look at the drums for this one. Let me see if there's anything else important I want to bring up. No, I think that's pretty good. So let's jump into the 80-20 rule when it comes to the drums for this. Powered with sound. The kick and clap and a couple of the hi-hat sounds that you heard in this project were from their Ultimate Sample Pack, which is a pretty massive sample pack filled with over 1,000 usable and iconic sounds. And as a special bonus, you can get 30% off that Ultimate Sample Pack. Just visit the link that's on screen now or in the description, and be sure to use the coupon code ULTIMATEBESTFRIENDS to get 30% off. Thank you again to Rocket Powered Sound for hooking up our community here. And with that said, let's jump into the 80-20 rule for this vid. Hi, my friend, Matt from Best Friends Club here. And if you've been paying attention, then you probably figured out what the 80-20 rule is when it comes to building out your drums. The goal here is to get 80% of the result with only 20% of the time, energy, or effort. And because the first key to the 80-20 rule for drums is to use a reference track, we're making sure that we're effortlessly hitting 80% of a very professional sounding track. In particular, we focus on nailing the pattern, sound selection, and the volume compared to the reference track so that we keep things fast and focused as we're building out our drums. The second key of the 80-20 rule here is to mix as you go in an extremely streamlined way by only focusing on the volume as well as a simple repeatable channel strip for each track that we're adding to our drums. The third and final key is to repurpose your old project files and to build up a suite of powerful templates, Ableton racks, and one knob effects that you've personalized and curated over time. If you'd like to get a head start by downloading all the racks, templates, and all the files that you've seen me use in the Ableton project file for this video, or if you'd just like to take a closer look at any of the techniques or tracks you saw me work on in this video at your own pace, you can find a link to this video's project files on screen now and at the second link that's in the YouTube description. I'm recreating a different song from the Beatport top charts every single week and making the project files available to anyone who wants them. You'll also get access to a private Discord where you can ask me and the community questions, as well as shared tracks for feedback. If you or your music are not quite ready for a shot in the arm like that, I've also made you a completely free bundle of templates, samples, and special bonuses that have helped me figure out how to completely finish one new song each and every single week. And you can grab that free Ultimate Song Finishing Toolkit by visiting the first link that's in the YouTube description here. However, if you just feel like staying on YouTube for now, that's totally fine. Save that link for later and check out this playlist of videos where I remake drums from other songs from the Beatport top charts. Or if you want to take what you learned in this video to the next level, definitely check out this video right here.